women. In a society where women were not allowed to be witnesses in a court of law. So there are many ways in which the New Testament challenges taken for granted assumptions about women's place. It probably is not a full story of the kind of thing we would talk about in a modern society of how we know justice for women when we recognize it. It's not entirely that kind of text, but it gives us some clues, I think, and it has given clues throughout the ages to people who don't always pay too much attention, that there is maybe another vision of the standing of women in this faith tradition. There is also a wonderful Old Testament text. I can't even pronounce his name. It's the daughters of Zelophehad, who come to Moses when their father dies and says, we have no brothers. We should be able to inherit the land, because otherwise his name will have nowhere to go. It was in part a patriarchal assumption, but nonetheless it had to do with whether women could inherit land, and Moses kind of hems and haws, and finally Moses goes to God, and God says they should inherit the land. So there are both in the Hebrew Scriptures and in the Christian New Testament glimpses, stories, ways for us to think differently about equality. And I agree with you that equality does not mean sameness. What we mean by it is a different thing. But I do think it's a text that gives us some reason to think that at least respect and care and love and a real honoring of women is a real part of the tradition. Not always practiced.
Thank you.
Didn't restructure society, I regret to say.
Any more comments on the treatment before we move to the other point? On both sides. Okay, let me move to the next point, which is the divorce as a right. How do you view divorce in Christianity and Islam? Okay, you can start first.
My understanding is that at present, in many of the Protestant traditions, divorce is understood as acceptable. The Roman Catholic Church, of which I am a member, of course, no divorce. And it arose probably with good intentions, again, caring for women, realizing that women were, if they were put aside by their husbands in primitive societies, then they were simply put aside by their husbands and needed to be cared for, and very often could not go back to their father's house. And so the legislation, so to speak, arose to protect women who at that time did not have any way to protect themselves. Roman Catholics are very, very, it's very difficult for us to change anything. So it probably within the next 300 or 400 years, the dialogue will end. In practice, however, and in counseling sessions at this point, there is a recognition that the coming together, and this stems from Scripture and stems from early tradition, that in the tradition, marriage is established for mutuality and for the procreation of children. We have been heavy on the procreation of children side, but in fact, of late, in the last 20 years, we have talked seriously about the mutuality. And in light of that, there are many instances in which couples are counseled toward separation and divorce simply because they will not be able to realize their full potential. But in the legal sense, in the Roman Catholic Church, it is not acceptable. And I just want to say one other thing about that. Again, it brings us to the idea of what the faith traditions mean to us. For us as Christians, the tradition is not once and for all institutionalized. I think what we see it as a prophetic mission, and I think we try to see our traditions as prophetic missions in the world that take on a life and whatever. But it is not, there certainly are no bases in Scripture, either in the Jewish Scriptures or in the Christian scriptures for women being able to initiate some kind of separation, even though it is a difficult situation.
Thank you. Just a quick remark on the matter of divorce. Again, a matter of methodology first. And by the way, when we make this comparison, we should not be unfair to one faith or the other. And to say it humbly, but hopefully in good spirit also. You see, when one reads the New Testament, I don't think it is as comprehensive as the Quran. It's definitely in the Quran and the numerous tradition of the Prophet. There is much more detailed information about the structure of family law that is not parallel to the Bible. So one cannot really say, all right, but you don't have that. And that's why in the case of Islam, really, in the Quran itself, as well as the second primary source of Islam and Hadith, you find enough information really to make a basic statement about the approach to divorce. Number one, that divorce is the least desirable thing. It is only like an inevitable evil. That's understandable. Secondly, that there are various forms of marriage dissolution, but unfortunately in the Western media sometimes some forms are never mentioned or heard of. One, marriage could be dissolved by mutual agreement between husband and wife, in which case he offers divorce. Two, divorce can be initiated by the unilateral utterance of the husband. That's legitimate. Three, divorce could be initiated by the utterance of the wife herself, if during the marital contract that was included as one of the conditions known as the isma remaining in her hand. Fourthly, even if the husband refuses to divorce his wife and he's wronging her, like for example abusing her or mistreating her, she has the right to go to a family court judge, present her case, and there are numerous bases in Sharia, very liberal basis actually, to the point of even saying that if he has bad breath that is very difficult and she was not aware of that before marriage, you could still ask for that. Not to trivialize the question of divorce, but to open the door for reasonable grounds. And if the judge finds this falls within the legitimate reasons, he can grant divorce whether the husband likes it or not. But there is one final form also, not only unknown in Western media, but I must say in all honesty, sometimes in some conservative Muslim countries, the scholars themselves do not speak about it too much. And that's known as khul' or divestiture, which means that even if the husband is at no fault, he's taking care of his wife, treating her properly, supporting her, he has done nothing wrong whatsoever. But for some reason or the other, private reason, the wife cannot stand living with him. Okay? And she doesn't want to go to court and put the dirty linen. She simply doesn't want to. In that case, she can ask for khul'. And khul' basically is the same like divorce, except that she would be willing in that case to return to him whatever marital gift he gave her. And that would prevent abuse, so that a woman does not get married to a man, get $10,000 marital gift, next day say, honey, I don't love you. Even though of course, honey, I don't love you might not go together. But anyway, coming next day and divorce him, marry another one. So the idea is that if she's sincere about it and there's no fault on his part, then it would be unfair to deprive him from the marital gift that he paid, with the understanding of continuation of marriage. So I hope that clarifies the picture that divorce actually is mutual right. The procedure might vary slightly, but otherwise the right is there.
Do you have any comments, Dr. Rose?
I don't think so. I think Jean has talked to the fact that in different traditions this is different. I was actually sitting back here thinking about whether rights language is quite the language for this set of issues. Sort of the thing we back into also in the morning about homosexuality. It is, of course, the fact that in many Protestant traditions, it's legitimate, it is within Christian faith to divorce in certain kinds of situations. And it has become a real issue currently in situations of abuse. In many Protestant traditions, it is still not considered appropriate to the faith. That is, they will, all those Bible citing, more conservative